The door slammed shut with the weight of something final, and the echo rang down the narrow hallway of the precinct like a gunshot. Angelina leaned against the wall for a breath she did not realize she had been holding, her chest still rising too fast from the chase outside. She could still taste the metallic tang of adrenaline at the back of her throat. Across from her, Nicole turned the key in the heavy lock, the sound of the latch sliding home louder than it needed to be. For a moment, it felt like they had sealed themselves away from the world, trapped in a square of concrete and fluorescent light where silence pressed closer than any suspect ever could. Angelina's hand brushed the butt of her holster, more out of habit than necessity, and she told herself she was only steadying her nerves. The suspect had been dragged down the corridor by 2 other officers minutes earlier, yelling threats that no one paid attention to, yet his voice seemed less dangerous than the quiet that followed. She could hear the tick of the clock above the whiteboard, slow, relentless, reminding her that the night was not over even if the street outside had gone dark. Nicole stepped away from the door, her shoulders straight, the same way she carried herself when she gave commands in the field. She removed her gloves one finger at a time, methodical, as though order could be rebuilt simply by refusing to rush. Angelina watched the movement longer than she should have, until Nicole looked up and their eyes collided in a moment neither intended. "You almost got yourself shot out there," Nicole said, her voice even but not flat. It had an edge of reprimand, yet beneath it something quieter trembled, something that sounded dangerously close to care. Angelina wanted to snap back, to insist that she had the situation under control, that she had seen the angle of the suspect's arm and knew he could not fire fast enough. But the words stalled. Her throat felt dry, her pulse hammering in her ears. She managed only, "I'm still standing, aren't I?" Nicole's gaze flicked down briefly to the faint tear at the sleeve of Angelina's jacket where a bullet had grazed fabric. Not skin, not flesh, only cloth, but enough to suggest what could have happened. Nicole stepped closer, close enough that Angelina caught the faint scent of soap beneath the lingering smoke from the firing range. The small interrogation room had been used too many times for confessions and confrontations. The table bore scratches from handcuffs slammed too hard, the chairs were mismatched, and the overhead light buzzed faintly as if unsure of its purpose. In this space, every inch felt magnified. Nicole's arm brushed against Angelina's shoulder as she passed, reaching for the case file left behind. It was a touch that should have meant nothing, a simple accident in a cramped environment, but Angelina felt it through her entire body, as if her nerves had been wired to spark at contact. She tried to focus on the paperwork spread across the table, the scrawled notes, the timeline they had pieced together, the photos clipped to corners, but concentration refused to return. Nicole flipped through pages, calm, efficient, but Angelina noticed the faint tremor in her own hands, how she pressed them into her pockets so Nicole would not see. The air thickened. The silence was not empty, it pulsed. Angelina realized she was breathing in rhythm with Nicole, that her own chest lifted when Nicole exhaled, as if they had somehow fallen into the same beat. She hated herself a little for noticing, but once noticed, she could not unfeel it. Nicole closed the file with a deliberate motion, and the sound echoed sharper than expected. "You're reckless," she said, but softer this time, not an accusation, but something nearer to confession. Angelina's lips parted, but words did not arrive. Instead, she caught the faintest shift in Nicole's expression, the way her stern facade cracked just for a second, like armor catching light at a seam. There was something vulnerable there, something Angelina had never been meant to see. A laugh might have broken the tension, but neither of them laughed. They stood too close now, their shadows overlapping on the wall. The hum of the light overhead seemed to grow louder, and Angelina felt a pull in her stomach that had nothing to do with fear. She replayed the moment from earlier in the alley, when Nicole had yanked her backward just in time, their bodies colliding, Nicole's arm wrapped tight across her chest as the bullet ricocheted off the dumpster beside them. The memory pressed against her ribs now, as vivid as the chase itself. She realized she was staring, and Nicole noticed. "What are you thinking?" Nicole asked, quieter than the ticking clock. Angelina swallowed, searching for something safe, something professional, but every possible answer sounded false. She shook her head instead, and Nicole did not push. The restraint in that silence felt heavier than words. The door behind them remained locked, a barrier against the noise of the precinct. They were supposed to be reviewing procedure, preparing statements, ensuring the arrest would hold up in court. Yet the paperwork lay forgotten, and the real trial was unfolding in the air between them. Angelina forced herself to move, to break the spell, and reached for her pen. But as she leaned forward, her arm brushed Nicole's once again, an unintentional touch that sent a spark racing through her. Nicole froze, her hand still on the folder, her fingers tightening slightly as though she had felt it too. The room seemed smaller now. The walls leaned closer, the corners darker. Angelina drew in a breath, but it shuddered halfway. Nicole tilted her head, studying her, and Angelina wondered if Nicole could read everything she was trying so hard to hide. "You should be more careful," Nicole said finally, a murmur meant for no one else. Angelina wanted to argue, to push back, but her voice betrayed her. "Maybe I can't be," she whispered, and the words landed between them like an admission she could never take back. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The tension wound tighter, a cord stretched thin. Angelina's pulse raced so violently she feared Nicole might hear it. Then footsteps sounded faintly down the corridor, voices carrying from another unit, laughter from officers who had no idea what was happening behind the closed door. The spell threatened to break, reality pushing its way back in. Nicole straightened, pulling her shoulders back, slipping the mask of composure over her features once again. She tapped the folder against the table as if reminding them both of why they were here. "We should finish this report," she said, voice steady now, but Angelina caught the slight unevenness hidden beneath. Angelina nodded too quickly, fumbling for her pen, trying to bury the rush of feeling under ink and lines. Yet even as she wrote, her hand shook, and every letter seemed to blur. She knew the tremor was not from the chase outside, not from fear of bullets, but from something far more dangerous, something she could not admit aloud. The clock ticked on, marking minutes that felt stretched into hours. Papers rustled, pens scratched, chairs shifted, yet the silence between them remained the loudest thing in the room. Angelina thought she would suffocate on it, and maybe Nicole thought the same, because when their eyes met once more, neither of them looked away. The voices outside faded, the hallway grew quiet, and the locked door stayed firm. Inside, two women stood caught between duty and desire, between regulation and a reckless beat of the heart. The night was far from over, and neither could pretend it was just another shift. Nicole arrived at the precinct before dawn, the parking lot still wrapped in mist, the sodium lamps casting their pale halos across damp asphalt. She moved with the same deliberate stride as always, yet beneath her calm exterior lingered the echo of the night before. She told herself she had locked those feelings away with the same firmness she had turned the key in that interrogation room, but the memory remained, a low burn in her chest that refused to dim. Angelina came in minutes later, her hair pulled back hastily, a coffee in hand, her eyes carrying the brightness of someone who never quite lost the rush of adrenaline. She caught sight of Nicole near the lockers and gave a small nod, professional, almost too careful. It was the kind of acknowledgement that said everything by pretending to say nothing. The morning briefing was routine, a rundown of patrol assignments, updates on a burglary ring that had been working the west side, reminders about paperwork deadlines. The sergeant's voice droned over the radio chatter in the background, but Angelina found herself glancing sideways at Nicole, watching the way she jotted notes with precise strokes, never once glancing back. They were paired together again, not unusual given their complementary skills. Nicole was disciplined, measured, with an instinct for anticipating trouble before it broke out. Angelina was quicker on her feet, sharper with improvisation, willing to take risks others avoided. Together, they balanced each other, though balance came with a cost neither dared to name. Their first call was a routine patrol through the market district, the streets still quiet, vendors setting up stalls with the smell of bread and fruit spilling into the cool air. Nicole drove, hands steady on the wheel, eyes scanning alleys and storefronts with the vigilance of habit. Angelina watched the sidewalks, sipping her coffee too fast, the bitter taste grounding her. Conversation was minimal at first. Reports, observations, short phrases meant only to fill the radio log. But the silence between the words held more weight than any chatter could. Angelina felt it in the way Nicole's hand brushed the gear shift near her knee, in the way Nicole's profile caught the light when the patrol car passed under a street lamp. When the call came through about a disturbance near a corner store, they responded immediately. A group of teenagers had been arguing too loudly, shoving each other until a bottle shattered on the pavement. Nothing dangerous, not yet, but enough to draw attention. Nicole stepped out of the car with authority, her voice carrying command without ever rising. Angelina circled to the side, keeping her distance but ready to step in. The kids scattered at the sight of uniforms, but one lingered, muttering under his breath. Angelina moved closer, intercepting before words became actions. She placed a steady hand on his shoulder, firm but not forceful, guiding him away. The boy resisted for a moment, then relented, his anger deflating under the weight of authority. Nicole watched from a few steps away, ready if needed, but Angelina handled it cleanly, her tone measured, her grip confident. When they returned to the car, Nicole said nothing at first. Then, with her usual restraint, she added, "You read him right." Angelina glanced over, surprised at the praise, then masked it quickly. "You expected me not to?" "I expected him to push harder," Nicole replied, eyes on the road. But Angelina caught the faint curve of a smile tugging at her mouth, small, fleeting, and more rewarding than any official commendation. The day stretched with more calls, minor incidents that demanded patience rather than force. A noise complaint, a shoplifting report, a fender bender where tempers flared higher than injuries. They moved through each situation with practiced rhythm, their coordination seamless. Yet within that rhythm lived the sparks neither could ignore. At one scene, while examining a broken lock on a warehouse door, Nicole knelt to inspect the hinge. Angelina crouched beside her, their shoulders brushing, the space too narrow for comfort. She smelled the faint leather of Nicole's jacket, saw the fine strands of hair that had slipped loose from her bun, and felt heat rise in her chest. Nicole shifted slightly, and for a second, their balance tilted, Angelina's hand reaching to steady herself landing against Nicole's arm. The contact lingered longer than necessary, both aware, neither acknowledging. As evening drew closer, they parked near the riverfront, writing reports while the city hummed around them. The windows were rolled down, letting in the sound of gulls and the distant rumble of traffic. Angelina tapped her pen against the notepad, restless, while Nicole wrote steadily, her handwriting as controlled as her voice. "You never get tired of being this serious?" Angelina asked finally, breaking the quiet. Nicole looked up, brows raised. "And you never get tired of asking questions that already have answers?" Angelina smirked, but the retort didn't mask the warmth that slipped into her chest at the sound of Nicole's dry humor. She liked these moments, rare and unguarded, when Nicole let a crack appear in her armor. The radio crackled again, pulling them back. A suspected burglary in progress, warehouse district, possible armed suspect. Both women stiffened, the air snapping back into tension. Nicole started the engine, and the patrol car surged forward, lights flashing against brick walls as they cut through the narrowing streets. The warehouse loomed dark and empty, shadows stretching across the loading dock. They moved silently, weapons drawn, eyes scanning. Inside, the air smelled of rust and dust, the echo of footsteps bouncing against concrete. A noise came from the upper level, a clatter of metal. Nicole signaled, and they moved in tandem, climbing the stairs, every step deliberate. At the landing, Angelina slipped slightly on a loose grate, her balance tilting. Nicole's arm shot out instantly, pulling her against the wall. For a split second, Angelina was pressed against Nicole's chest, her heartbeat thundering, their faces inches apart. The noise upstairs turned out to be nothing more than a stray cat knocking over a tin can, but neither of them moved right away. The world seemed to pause, their proximity louder than any alarm. Nicole released her grip slowly, her hand trailing back as though reluctant to let go. Angelina exhaled sharply, masking it as relief, though the tremor in her body betrayed her. They finished the search, cleared the area, filed the report. On the drive back, neither spoke much, the silence loaded with everything unspoken. Angelina stared out the window, the city lights flickering across her reflection, while Nicole kept her eyes on the road, jaw tight, hands steady. Back at the precinct, the shift ended quietly. Officers swapped stories, laughter spilling across the bullpen, the kind of camaraderie that came from long hours and shared risks. Nicole gathered her notes, tucking them neatly into a folder, while Angelina lingered, her hand brushing across the edge of the desk as though stalling. When Nicole finally looked up, their eyes locked again, the same dangerous silence returning. Neither moved closer, but neither turned away. The air between them carried the weight of the entire day, the chases, the touches, the unspoken gratitude, the restraint stretched thin. Angelina broke the gaze first, offering a short nod, then walking toward the exit with her jacket slung over her arm. Nicole watched her go, the tension still coiled tight, the choice still deferred. Outside, the city pulsed with sirens and lights, demanding their return tomorrow. But tonight, both women carried the memory of every accidental brush, every glance that lingered, every heartbeat that had betrayed them. Whispers had a way of spreading faster than any police report. By midweek, Angelina noticed the glances. They were not loud or obvious, but they accumulated like drops against glass until the surface felt ready to crack. A pair of officers at the coffee machine paused when she walked past, their conversation suspended in the air like smoke. A detective in the hallway gave Nicole a nod that seemed more pointed than casual. None of it could be proven, of course. In a station built on observation, everyone learned how to disguise their curiosity. Yet Angelina felt it every time she sat at her desk, every time Nicole entered the room, and silence seemed to sharpen. The station had its own ecology, its own rumor mill, and it needed no fuel beyond two women working too closely, two women whose eyes lingered a fraction longer than they should. Nicole carried herself as though nothing touched her. She filed reports, issued directives, responded to calls with the same precision as always. Her posture was unbending, her tone clipped, her professionalism carved from stone. But Angelina could see the difference. She noticed the slight pause before Nicole spoke, the careful spacing she left whenever they stood side by side, the way she avoided lingering in the break room if Angelina was already there. Discipline had become a shield, and it was growing heavier by the day. The breaking point came on a Thursday morning. Angelina was called into the lieutenant's office, the blinds half drawn, the air too still. Nicole was already inside, seated stiffly, her hands clasped tight in her lap. The lieutenant gestured to the chair across from him, his expression polite but unreadable. "We've had some concerns," he began, voice measured. "Not about performance. Both of you have been exceptional in the field. But there have been observations." Angelina's stomach tightened. Observations was a word that carried more accusation than proof. She waited, forcing her breathing steady, while the lieutenant continued. "Questions about boundaries. About professionalism. I don't need to remind either of you how easily stories spread, how quickly they become distractions. The department can't afford distractions." Angelina felt heat rise to her face, not from shame but from the injustice of it. They had done nothing wrong. They had saved lives, prevented violence, handled their assignments with efficiency. Yet here they were, summoned not for failure but for suspicion. Nicole spoke first, her voice calm. "Our focus has always been the job. Whatever stories are circulating, they don't reflect the reality." The lieutenant studied her for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to Angelina. "And you?" Angelina's throat tightened. She wanted to echo Nicole, to project the same control, but honesty tugged at her. We've worked closely, yes. Maybe too closely for comfort, but never at the expense of the mission. The lieutenant nodded slowly, as though weighing every syllable. That's what I needed to hear. Still, I want you both to be cautious. Appearances matter, whether we like it or not. Dismissed, they left the office in silence. The corridor seemed narrower than usual, the air dense. Nicole walked ahead, her pace clipped, her shoulders rigid. Angelina followed, fighting the urge to reach out, to break the space Nicole had placed between them. Later that afternoon, the tension broke in smaller ways. Angelina caught two younger officers laughing over something on a phone screen, their heads bent close. When they noticed her, they straightened too quickly, guilt flashing across their faces. She did not need to see the photo to know it was about her, about Nicole, about the whispers that had become currency. She forced herself to keep walking, her jaw tight. But the humiliation settled like a bruise she could not hide. Nicole found her in the locker room after shift, sitting on the bench, elbows on her knees, staring at the floor tiles. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and damp fabric. Nicole closed the door softly behind her, the lock clicking into place, not unlike that first night in the interrogation room. You heard them, Nicole said quietly. Not a question, but an acknowledgement. Angelina lifted her eyes, frustration and exhaustion bleeding through. It doesn't matter what I heard. They've already made up their minds. Nicole sat beside her, careful to leave a small space, though the distance felt forced. Then we don't give them fuel. We do the job. We keep it clean. That's how we win. Angelina let out a bitter laugh. And what if clean isn't enough? What if they've already decided what story they want? Nicole turned toward her then, her gaze sharp. You let them decide, and they win. You keep your head down, and they lose interest. That's how it works here. Angelina wanted to believe her, but the weariness in Nicole's own eyes betrayed her conviction. For all her certainty, Nicole was tired too, tired of fighting battles she could not name. The moment stretched. Angelina's hand shifted slightly on the bench, brushing against Nicole's. It was accidental, yet neither of them pulled away. The contact was small, hidden in the sterile locker room, but it hummed with everything they had been denying. Nicole's jaw tightened, as if restraining words she dared not release. We can't, she whispered. Angelina nodded, but her fingers lingered for a fraction longer before withdrawing. I know. They left the room separately, reassembling their masks, rejoining the noise of the precinct as though nothing had happened. The next days blurred into routine. Calls came, cases unfolded, reports piled up. Yet the undercurrent remained. A blurry photograph circulated in a private group chat, showing Nicole's hand gripping Angelina's arm during the warehouse search. The angle made it look like intimacy rather than protection. By the time it was deleted, half the station had seen it. Angelina felt eyes follow her everywhere, the weight of judgment thick in the air. Nicole responded by doubling down on professionalism, her tone clipped in briefings, her distance unyielding. It was as if she believed discipline could erase suspicion, though Angelina knew the opposite was true. The stricter Nicole became, the more the rumors grew teeth. One evening, after a long patrol, they returned to the precinct to file paperwork. The bullpen was nearly empty, the hum of computers filling the silence. Angelina stared at her report, the words blurring, until frustration pushed her up from the desk. She found Nicole in the evidence room, reviewing files under the harsh fluorescent light. Why are we pretending this doesn't matter? Angelina asked, voice low but intense. Nicole looked up, startled. Because if we don't, we lose everything we've worked for. Angelina stepped closer, unable to stop herself. We're already losing. Every whisper, every photo, every look, they've taken control of the story. And we're just letting them. Nicole's expression cracked, just for a second. She closed the folder slowly, placing it aside as though setting down a weapon. What do you want me to say, Angelina? That I feel it too? That every time you're near me, I have to remind myself we're in uniform? You think I don't fight it every second." The words landed heavy, sharp, undeniable. For the first time, Nicole had given voice to what they had both been carrying. The silence that followed was electric. Angelina's chest rose with unsteady breaths, her pulse drumming against her ribs. She wanted to reach out, to close the distance, but the risk loomed too large. Instead, she whispered, "Then what do we do?" Nicole's eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. "We endure. Until we decide if it's worth the cost." It was not the answer Angelina wanted, but it was the only truth Nicole could offer. They left the evidence room together, side by side, yet careful not to touch. Outside, the night pressed against the windows, the city alive with sirens and shadows. Inside, the storm remained unspoken, but it was there, waiting, louder than any rumor, stronger than any rule. The city was soaked in rain the night the call came. Storm water ran along the curbs, neon signs bled color into the puddles, and the air carried that heavy metallic scent that made the world feel like it had been washed raw. Angelina gripped the dashboard as Nicole sped the cruiser through slick streets, the wail of the siren bouncing off glass towers. Dispatch had reported a break-in at a warehouse, possibly armed suspects still inside. The adrenaline returned with brutal clarity. Angelina felt it in her blood, sharpening her vision, narrowing her focus. Beside her, Nicole's face was a study in control, jaw set, hands steady on the wheel. Even in chaos, she radiated command. They arrived to find the loading dock gate broken open, shadows shifting in the cavernous space. With weapons drawn, they entered silently, boots splashing through shallow water pooling across the floor. Every sound echoed too loud, the drip of rain through the ceiling, the distant scuttle of rats, the groan of metal. Nicole signaled with a hand gesture, sending Angelina to the right while she took the left. Angelina moved carefully, her heart pounding, every nerve alive. She reached a stack of crates and pressed her back against the damp wood, scanning the shadows. A noise cracked through the stillness, a figure darting toward the exit. Angelina lunged, catching his jacket, wrestling him down. He fought hard, cursing, fists flailing, but she locked her arms tight. Nicole appeared instantly, pinning the suspect with swift, practiced movements. The struggle ended as quickly as it began, the man cuffed and shouting into the concrete emptiness. Backup arrived within minutes, sweeping the building, hauling the suspect away. The adrenaline drained almost as fast as it had surged, leaving Angelina's body trembling. She leaned against a pillar, breathing hard, water dripping down her face, though she wasn't sure if it was sweat or rain. Nicole walked over, silent, her expression unreadable. "You okay?" Nicole asked finally, her voice low, almost drowned out by the storm outside. Angelina nodded, though her pulse betrayed her. "Fine." But Nicole didn't move away. She stood close, scanning her face, her eyes narrowing with concern. She reached out, fingers brushing a streak of dirt from Angelina's cheek. It was a small gesture, protective, but it sent a jolt through Angelina like lightning splitting the sky. Neither of them spoke. The noise of radios, the shuffle of boots, the clatter of equipment faded until all that remained was the charged air between them. Angelina felt heat rise beneath her soaked uniform, the tremor in her chest growing unbearable. She turned her face slightly, her lips just inches from Nicole's hand. Nicole froze, caught in the same pull. Her eyes flickered, battled between discipline and desire waging behind them. She withdrew her hand quickly, as though burned, and stepped back. "Let's finish the report," she said, her voice sharp, clipped, a shield raised too fast. Angelina nodded, though disappointment crashed through her. They returned to the cruiser, the rain pounding harder, the windshield streaked with light. The ride back was silent, thick with everything unspoken. At the precinct, most of the station had cleared out. Midnight had left the halls hollow, the fluorescent lights buzzing like insects. They sat at their desks, typing notes, filling forms, their pens scratching against paper. Angelina struggled to focus, her mind still circling the moment by the pillar, the brush of Nicole's hand. When the last report was filed, Nicole stood. "I'll lock the evidence," she said, gathering the folder. Angelina rose too, following her to the storage room at the end of the hall. The room smelled of metal and paper, lined with shelves heavy with files. Nicole placed the folder inside, closed the drawer, and leaned against the cabinet with a long exhale. Angelina lingered by the door, hesitant. The storm outside rattled the windows, thunder rolling across the city. The silence inside stretched taut, fragile, as if one word could shatter it. "Why do you keep pulling back?" Angelina asked softly. Nicole looked up, startled. "Because I have to." Angelina stepped closer. "Do you?" Nicole's breath caught. Her eyes hardened, but her voice betrayed her. "If I don't, we lose everything. Our work. Our place here. Respect. We're losing it anyway," Angelina said, her voice trembling with urgency. "Every look, every rumor, every whisper. They've already written the story for us. The only thing we haven't done is decide if it's true." Nicole's chest rose sharply, her composure faltering. She pushed off the cabinet, standing straighter, but her eyes burned with something raw. "Do you think I don't want?" She cut herself off, shaking her head. "Wanting doesn't matter." Angelina took another step, until the space between them narrowed to almost nothing. She could see the tension in Nicole's jaw, the way her fingers curled as though restraining themselves. "It matters to me," Angelina whispered. For a moment, Nicole did not move. The storm pounded harder against the building, thunder cracking like a verdict. Then, suddenly, the restraint shattered. Nicole reached forward, grabbing Angelina by the collar, pulling her close. Their mouths collided in a kiss that was not gentle but desperate, fierce, a release of everything locked away. Angelina gasped against her lips, then surrendered, her hands gripping Nicole's shoulders. The kiss deepened, urgent, both of them tasting the storm on each other's skin, the months of denial combusting into fire. It was clumsy and perfect all at once, the kind of kiss that carried the weight of every look, every touch, every word unsaid. They broke apart only when breath became impossible, foreheads pressed together, gasping. Angelina's chest heaved, her heart slamming. Nicole's eyes were wild, vulnerable in a way Angelina had never seen. "This is dangerous," Nicole whispered, voice hoarse. "I know," Angelina said. "But I can't keep pretending." Nicole closed her eyes as though fighting herself. "Neither can I." The storm outside surged, wind rattling the windows, rain hammering the roof. Inside, the two women stood in the quiet evidence room, lips swollen, hearts racing, the world outside irrelevant for one impossible moment. When they finally stepped back, the distance felt unbearable. Nicole turned away, pressing her palms against the cabinet, breathing hard. Angelina watched her, chest aching, but for the first time, the weight lifted. The truth had been spoken. Not in words, but in the press of lips, in the surrender of restraint. Nicole straightened after a long silence. "We can't let this happen again. Not here." Angelina nodded slowly, though the taste of the kiss lingered. "Then tell me where." Nicole's eyes met hers, conflicted, torn, but alive with something undeniable. She didn't answer, not yet. She opened the door instead, letting the storm's echo flood back into the hall. "We'll figure it out," she said finally, her voice softer now, tinged with something that sounded like hope. They walked out together, side by side, but not touching. The precinct was nearly silent, the city beyond alive with sirens and rain. They knew nothing had been solved, that tomorrow the rumors would return, that the risks had only grown sharper. But for tonight, for one brief stolen moment, they had stopped running from themselves. And that, Angelina thought as she stepped into the night, was worth every storm still waiting. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the city washed clean yet strangely fragile, as if the streets themselves remembered the thunder. At the precinct, the rhythm resumed, radios crackling, boots thudding down hallways, voices rising and fading. But for Angelina and Nicole, nothing was the same. The kiss in the evidence room lived beneath their skin, a mark invisible but impossible to ignore. They went through motions with careful precision. Reports filed, patrols completed, orders issued. Every gesture was sharper, every word more deliberate. Their professionalism became armor, polished until it shone too bright. To others, it looked like focus. To them, it was survival. Yet cracks appeared quickly. In a briefing, Angelina caught Nicole watching her too long, eyes flickering before snapping back to the agenda. In the cruiser, silence stretched until it trembled, both of them gripping the edges of words they dared not release. And always, there were the whispers. The rumors had not vanished. If anything, they had grown louder after the blurred photograph. Some colleagues avoided them, unwilling to step near the fire. Others leaned in, hungry for spectacle. Angelina felt the stares like weight pressing between her shoulder blades. Nicole bore it with stony calm, her expression carved from restraint, but Angelina could see the tension in her clenched jaw, in the way her hand sometimes hovered near her radio longer than necessary. The inevitable summons arrived 2 days later. Both were called into the captain's office, blinds drawn, the air heavy. The captain sat with a folder open, his tone professional but edged with warning. "There are questions about boundaries," he said. "Anonymous concerns. Some of you have been observed too often together. Some say it affects perception, and perception matters as much as fact." Angelina's chest tightened. She wanted to shout that they had done nothing wrong, that every action in the field had been flawless. But she knew protests would only sound like guilt. Nicole spoke instead, calm, measured. "Our record speaks for itself," she said. "We've performed without compromise. We've delivered results. If there are concerns, we welcome oversight." The captain studied her, then turned to Angelina. "And you?" Angelina forced her voice steady. "I stand by what she said. We are committed to the job. Whatever else people think, the work has never suffered." The captain closed the folder, his expression unreadable. "That will be all. Just remember, your careers are bigger than gossip. Don't let rumor decide your future." They left in silence, the weight of the meeting heavier than any weapon. In the hallway, Nicole stopped briefly, her eyes meeting Angelina's. No words passed, but the message was clear. They were standing at a line, and it was time to choose. That night, the city seemed quieter, though Angelina knew it was only exhaustion clouding her senses. She finished her shift and lingered near her locker, unable to shake the thought that everything was slipping beyond her control. When she closed the door, Nicole was there, leaning against the opposite wall. "Walk with me," Nicole said. They stepped into the night together, leaving the buzz of fluorescent lights behind. The streets were damp, reflecting the glow of passing cars. They walked in silence until they reached the small park 2 blocks away, its benches slick with rain, the air cool and damp. Nicole stopped beneath a lamppost, her face half-shadowed, half-lit. She folded her arms, not defensive but steadying herself. "We can't keep doing this," she said. Angelina's heart lurched. "Doing what?" "Living like ghosts," Nicole replied. "Pretending nothing's happening, hiding from whispers, letting fear dictate everything. It's tearing us apart." Angelina swallowed hard. "So what do we do? Walk away? Pretend it never happened?" Nicole shook her head slowly. "I don't want to pretend. Not anymore." The words landed with the weight of confession. Angelina felt breath rush from her chest, relief and fear colliding. "Then we face it," she said quietly. "All of it. The rumors. The rules. The consequences." Nicole's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "It will cost us. Transfers, scrutiny, maybe worse." "Then we pay it," Angelina said. "Better than losing ourselves." They stood in silence, the city humming around them, the decision solidifying in the space between. Finally, Nicole stepped closer, her voice low, vulnerable. "I want both," she said. "The work and you. But only if you choose it too." Angelina's answer was simple, steady. "I do." The next morning, They walked into HR together. Forms were requested, protocols explained, reassignment options laid out. It felt clinical, procedural, almost absurd compared to the storm of emotion that had brought them there. But both signed, their names side by side on documents that carried both risk and promise. Reassignment came quickly. Angelina was moved to a parallel unit, reporting to a different sergeant. Nicole retained her command, but with oversight attached, regular reviews meant to ensure boundaries. The changes were official, transparent, announced in clipped emails to the department. Some colleagues looked surprised, others smirked knowingly. A few offered quiet nods of respect. The gossip did not vanish, but it shifted. No longer whispers about secrets, but debates about decisions, about policy, about courage or recklessness. Angelina learned to let the noise pass. Nicole met it with her usual calm, though now her eyes carried something new, a quiet defiance, a refusal to be shamed for what she had chosen. Their private world changed too. No more stolen glances across the bullpen, no more tension stretched to breaking in locked rooms. They found each other after hours, away from the glass walls and fluorescent lights. Dinner in small diners, walks by the river, conversations that flowed without fear of interruption. The first time they sat across a table without uniforms, Angelina laughed at how strange it felt, how simple. Nicole smiled, rare and unguarded. The kiss they shared that night was different from the one in the evidence room. Still electric, still consuming, but gentler now, no longer born of desperation. It carried the weight of choice, of freedom, of a future beginning to take shape. Weeks passed. Cases continued. Life in the precinct remained relentless, unpredictable. But the structure they had built held. They worked with discipline, loved with intention, endured the noise without letting it drown them. At the next departmental gala, the hall glittered with uniforms and chatter, music weaving through the air. Angelina arrived separately, as agreed, greeting colleagues, enduring polite conversations. Later, as the raffle dragged on, her phone buzzed with a single word from Nicole, rooftop. She slipped away, climbing the stairs to the open air. Nicole was there, leaning against the railing, the city lights burning behind her. For a moment, Angelina simply stood, taking in the sight of her, no longer a secret, no longer a shadow. Nicole turned, her smile small but real. "I was starting to wonder if you'd come." Angelina stepped forward, heart steady. "You knew I would." They stood side by side, looking out at the city they had sworn to protect, the building where they had endured whispers and rules, the place that had tried to confine them. Angelina slipped her hand into Nicole's, their fingers weaving together. It was not dramatic, not reckless. Just steady, sure, undeniable. The night air carried the sound of sirens, the hum of life continuing. For once, Angelina did not feel the weight of judgment or the press of fear. She felt only the warmth of Nicole's hand, the quiet certainty that they had chosen this together. "Do you regret it?" Nicole asked softly. Angelina shook her head. "Not for a second." Nicole's eyes glinted, the lamplight catching them like fire. "Then let's keep building." They stood there, two women in uniform, no longer defined by rumor, but by the structure they had fought to create. Not scandal, not secrecy, but something stronger, steadier, something theirs. And when Angelina leaned in, pressing her lips to Nicole's in the cool night, it felt not like defiance, but like victory. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this story. If you felt the heartbeat between Angelina and Nicole the way we did, then you know that sometimes courage means more than facing danger in the streets. It means daring to hold on to the person who makes every risk worthwhile. At She and She, we believe love stories deserve to be told in all their complexity, their tenderness, and their fire. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Leave us a comment, share your thoughts, and join our community of listeners who believe that two women can carry both duty and desire in the same breath.